Good morning. Welcome to United Unitarian Universalist Congregation. My name is Meg Whaley, and Emma and I will be leading the service this morning. Pastor David will be back in the pulpit next week. I have a couple of announcements for you. One is that Ellen and Geoff are the coffee hosts for today, and I'm guessing Ellen made her pumpkin thing. And it's not very good at all, so I would highly avoid going down to coffee hour today. Good. Okay. All right. So avoid coffee hour. Okay, good. All right. Threads United will meet at 9:30 on Wednesday morning at Marcia's home. If you have any questions, contact Marcia. Jamie DeWicki will be performing an original music show this Friday evening at 7 p.m. here at United. So Jamie has been our pianist for us as a fill-in pianist sometimes. She is the daughter of Mike and Donna, thank you, DeWicki, and she's just a great musician and singer. So if you've never seen her before, or if you've seen her, this is an opportunity to hear her beautiful offering to us. There are no tickets or registration needed. You can invite friends. Cash donations at the door are kindly welcome, but not necessary if you cannot do that. Circle suppers are returning. If you haven't taken part in circle suppers before, they're a great time to spend time with others over a tasty meal. Members take turns hosting each other in their respective homes once this fall and again in winter or spring with specific dates and times determined by the hosts. If you're interested and willing to host a supper this year, please get in touch with Sandy Zingler, who is right over there. And I'm guessing she'll put something will be in the newsletter as well about that. So you can contact Sandy. All right. Now it is time to light our chalice. Please join me in saying our chalice lighting words on the wall. They are different than what we usually say. We light this chalice as an expression of our unique selves and gifts. We recognize that we are held and supported by our ancestors, our community, and the earth. We listen deeply to the longings in our heart so that we can be active participants in creating dreams that are bigger than us.
Good morning. So this theme of Ancestors felt like a really nice way to follow Geoff's service of legacy last week, and we were meeting as a worship committee team, and Sam's idea, actually, I'm going to call you out on this, was why don't we follow with talking about our ancestors? And this time of year is a time where those themes might be present anyway. So that's what we're doing today. And we want to work with ancestors quite broadly. So some of us might be able to say that our blood ancestors don't have the best connection with us, or there was difficulty, or there was pain there. So we want to call in ancestors today of all different types. So any beings that carry wisdom or carry teachings, things that are ancient like rocks and trees, wisdom of the earth. We might call in our blood ancestors and relatives, teachers and mystics that we feel especially connected to, spiritual lineages, ancestors of soul, animals and pets. So really anything that we feel speaks to our hearts or speaks wisdom in any way to us, we want to recognize them today. And Sam sent this quote to me actually from the Soul Matters group, and it says, "Some people are your relatives, but others are your ancestors, and you choose the ones you want to have as ancestors. You create yourself out of their values." So really thinking about the ways that those wisdom teachings might help us shape who we are as people. Something I've been feeling really connected to lately is mycelium, all those little underground thread-like things. And I don't know if I'd call them an ancestor per se, but they're definitely something that I think about and that helps me to understand my community and understand the world I live in. So they're a source of wisdom for me. And I've started thinking a lot about how there's probably a network of mycelium between people too. And Chet might call this the in-between, right? But these little threads that connect all of us. And when Meg and I were talking about this service, we were thinking a lot about that network of connection extending not only between us that are living now, but also between these ancestors that we might be calling in. So we want to consider how the presence of those ancestors, even if they're not here with us, is still alive in that web, is still alive in that connection that we share with them. So our hope today is that we can offer stories and we can celebrate and give our gratitude back to those ancestors that are important to us so that we can nourish that web that we're all connected to. All right, so our opening call to worship poem is called In Heaven by Mark Bellatini. Ah, it's true. When our ancestors spoke of heaven, they were speaking of this moment. When they went on about nirvana, they imagined a time like this. When they sang of paradise, it was this morning they imagined. A time when all the mysteries of life and death are blended in a community of praise, when the bones of ancient lovers are given flesh again in our own bodies, teachers of long ago speaking of love and truth, once more in lives so ordinary they are extraordinary. Blessed is our breath in and out, quiet. Blessed is our sitting, our fidgeting, our movement. Blessed is our heartbeat echoing the pounding alleluias of distant stars. Blessed is the silence that is presence, not absence. So this service is a family service, so we're welcoming everyone to stay for the duration of the service, but I know Sarah is willing, if at any point anyone needs a break, she'll step out with them. I don't have to just call out kids in specific, but so we're still going to read a story, though, for the Time for All Ages today, and this is a story called Berry Song by Michaela Goad. It was a book that I found at work at the Nature Center where I work, and it speaks to, I won't tell you, I'll just read it. I'm not going to tell you what it speaks to. Okay, we'll see if I can do this. All right. On an island at the edge of a wide, wild sea, Grandma shows me how to live on the land. Together we pull hemlock branches from the salty ocean, heavy with herring eggs like tiny stars. On the beach we gather ribbons of slippery seaweed dancing in the tide. By the tumbly, icy falls, we dip our nets for silvery salmon hidden beneath the current. And in the forest, we pick berries. Salmonberry, cloudberry, blueberry, huckleberry, soapberry, strawberry. The berries sing to us, glowing like little jewels. We sing too, so berry and bear know we are here. Grandma tells me, we speak to the land, as the land speaks to us, I say. The forest sings to us through misting rain and whoosh of wing, the sweet smell of cedar and the tickle of moss. We sing too, so the land knows we are grateful. Grandma tells me we take care of the land as the land takes care of us, I say, giving thanks. Our ancestors sing to us, their voices dancing on wind and water. We sing too, so they know that we'll always remember. And we sing for the future, so that all will hear and all will know this beautiful berry song. Grandma tells me we are part of the land, as the land is part of us, I say. The ocean sings to us, rolling ashore like a beating drum. We sing too, so the tides know we are home. Together we make salmonberry syrup and cranberry marmalade until the kitchen glows like a summer sky. We feast on huckleberry pie and strawberry crisp, raspberry scones, and freshly whipped soap berries. We share gifts of blueberry jelly and naganberry jam. The nights grow long, edged in frost, as sea fades gently into sky. The forest is resting, the forest is dreaming, waiting for berry song. And so the seasons change. On an island at the edge of a wide, wild sea, I take my little sister's hands. I have so much to show you. All right, we're going to do something a little different. Some of you are really not going to appreciate me for this. Yep, we're going to sing a song. The music we're doing today with Alex not being here is songs that Meg and I are going to teach you. So it's a little bit different than we might normally do it. This song in particular I really love because I think it relates to that story we just heard. And the last line, I'll skip ahead so you can see it. The last line says, "Fallen trees still feed the seeds they cast before they die." And the song is a simple one. It's just a song about trees, but I think the story reminded us that sometimes the earth is our ancestor. The earth is that wisdom keeper that we're listening to. And so even just recognizing the way trees live and the way trees grow might have something to teach us about our own lives. So I thought it was fitting, and the last line being a reminder that even those beings that aren't living anymore are still offering their wisdom to us and their nourishment. So if you feel comfortable standing up for this song, there are movements. If you don't, you certainly don't have to, but that's the invitation. It's a simple call and response one. And I'll sing a little bit and do the movements, and then you can repeat and do the movements back if you feel comfortable. Sounds like this. Trees grow slow. Try that. Trees grow slow, and trees grow strong. Your turn. And trees grow strong. Trees sway in the wind their whole lives long. Your turn. Trees sway in the wind their whole lives long. Trees hold the ground while they reach for the sky. Your turn. Trees hold the ground while they reach for the sky. And fallen trees still feed the seeds. Try that. And fallen trees still feed the seeds they cast before they die. They cast before they die. You guys are so good. Let's sing it all together one time. All right, here we go. Trees grow slow and trees grow strong. Trees sway in the wind their whole lives long. Trees hold the ground as they reach for the sky. And fallen trees still feed the seeds they cast before they die. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You survived. What do we do now? Joys and sorrows.
So now's the time when we'll invite you up to share joys and sorrows, a way we connect with our community. Please use a mic and say your name, and you can take a stone out of the bowl and put a stone in the water to send your joy or sorrow out to the wider community. Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Find a comfortable place for your body and breathe as deeply as you are able. Hold in your mind the image of all things, all beings coming from the same tree, roots stretched in limitless tangles of connection and sustenance, interconnected and interlaced in a web of living and dying that is so beautifully designed and most times invisible. Join me in breathing. Breathe in for our lives touched by ancestors, known and unknown. Breathe out for living lives that will touch our descendants. Breathe in for folks held in loving arms as they were raised up. Breathe out for folks who had to make their own way too early in their lives. Breathe in for beloveds who we hold close in our hearts every day. Breathe out for beloveds we sometimes have trouble reaching out to. Breathe in for loving. Breathe out for losing. Breathe in for parents and children doing the best they can. Breathe out for the impossible decisions they've had to make. Breathe in for those living with addictions, mental illness, and grief. Breathe out for those living with and caring for folks living with addiction, mental illness, and grief. Breathe in for caregivers of all kinds who give of themselves to make other people's lives better, more whole. Breathe out to honor this holy work. Let's take a moment of silence together. After the moment of silence, I'll start singing a song, and you can just join in when you're ready. It doesn't matter how long you have forgotten, only how soon you remember. It doesn't matter how long you have forgotten. Remember now. It doesn't matter how long you have forgotten, only how soon you remember. It doesn't matter how long you have forgotten. Remember now. It doesn't doesn't matter how long you have forgotten, only how soon you remember. It doesn't matter how long you have forgotten. Remember, remember now. It doesn't matter how long you have forgotten, only how soon you remember. It doesn't matter how long you have forgotten. Remember, remember now.
So now we will participate in remembering together. And this is the part of the service where the invitation is to celebrate and to give gratitude and to share stories from our own ancestors. And we're inviting the creation of an altar as a way to visualize that, as a way to share items that hold those stories and share items that hold those memories and that wisdom. And we're hoping that in visualizing it, we can see all those gifts that are a part of that web that we're connected to. And so the altar being a place where we can see and understand that the gifts that one person shares from their lineage might also impact all of us in certain ways. And so we're all interwoven in that and giving and receiving. If you haven't brought an item to share, there are stones at the end, and you're invited to come up and place a stone on the altar as a way to remember any ancestors that you're holding in your heart. It's not required by any means that you come up and share a story. What we're asking, though, is that if you have an item and you want to come up and place it silently, that's perfectly fine too, but we'd really love to see everyone's contributions, the story sharing being optional. The camera will be recording this part at the beginning, so we ask that anyone who feels comfortable sharing their stories on camera come up during that beginning part. And then toward the end, as things start to slow down, I'll say out loud to Aaron that we're going to pause the recording so that if there's anyone who would feel more comfortable sharing stories or bringing anything up to the altar off camera, you'll be able to do that at that time. And I'll announce when the camera's paused. Yes, and we will, as I said before, we'll recognize that the gifts and the stories that we're sharing are not necessarily just ours, that they trickle out and impact all of us in different ways. So we would love it now if you did bring an item, if you would come up and share a little bit about that, or simply place it on the altar, or contribute a stone, whatever you feel called to do. And as you're doing that, just really carrying whatever ancestors are feeling present for you at this moment.
I'm Heidi, and I didn't bring anything this morning because I didn't know what to bring. And I didn't think I'd get up and say anything, but what you said earlier about pets and animals really resonated with me. Growing up, I was often very lonely, and I had a horse and I had a dog, and no matter how down I was feeling or how lonely I was feeling, they were always there for me. And still, you know, I have sheep and I have horses and we have dogs. And one dog in particular, Sam, came to us. He was a rescue dog. He had been severely abused and wasn't sure he wanted to be with us. But over time, we were able to form just a wonderful bond with him. And he turned out to be the most loving, most wonderful animal. And so those human-animal bonds just mean so much to me.
I'm Ellen, and this item, I think, is from my Aunt Clara. I say I think because she was of the generation where, so she and her husband and another, like one of her brothers, and then their mother, so my grandmother, they all lived together. That was kind of more common, I would say, kind of back in the day. They've all passed away. But my Aunt Clara was one of my favorite aunts. She actually passed when I was pregnant with Geoff's and my only child, so that just seemed kind of significant as well. So this item it looks like it's in Polish. There's something written in Polish, and it looks like it's some type of religious artifact. So it just made me think of her and my other Polish ancestors. Thanks.
I'm Lisa. Sorry, I have a whole bag full. But they go together. Oh, wow. This is a picture of my dad on the left in the Air Force and his jet and his ground crew. And I never knew this picture existed until a few years ago. My mom had it, and she brought it out a few years ago. So I'm glad she did. Sheesh. And this is his pipe and his mug, and it has his name on it, and that's his jet. And there's a little pin in here that's his unit that he was in. And his plane crashed when I was 2.5, so I never knew him, never met him. I don't remember, well, I met him, but I don't remember anything about him, so I don't have a lot of things to remind me of him, but this is really special to me.
As with everything that seems to be happening to me lately, I was walking out the door and forgot my ancestry. Well, I forgot the item. I didn't forget my ancestry, period. Okay, well, my ancestors actually came through, first Germany and Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and my grandfather was in the service, and he was very proud of that. And when he passed, we were going through his things, and I found a manila envelope with paperwork of his grandfather who served in the Civil War. And I figured that must have been very important to him if he saved that. So I did some research on it and basically put together his grandfather, Martin's, history in the Civil War. And if you're here last week, the book that I showed, it's in there. So that's my lineage and my ancestry.
Hello. Oh, sorry, that was loud. I'm Sarah. Hi. So the first person I thought of was my grandma Elaine, which is funny because she's not even actually a blood relation of mine. So she's, when I was growing up, she was just my grandma, but she was actually my grandfather's second wife because my mother's mother had passed away before I was even born. And she was just always my grandma Elaine. But as I got older and I learned more about the rest of her life, it was just super fascinating. She went in to become a nun when she was very young, which is what they did those days. Like she went in when she was, 10 or 11, 12 maybe. And then discovered later on that wasn't really actually what she wanted to be doing. But she was a nun for 20 years. I mean, she went in, she became a teacher. They sent her to Hawaii. She was teaching in a Catholic school in Hawaii as a nun. And then in her 40s, she left the nunnery, the convent, wherever she went. She left the sisterhood, yes, and became a teacher out in the world as a single woman at that time and met my grandfather, who was a recent widower with 5 children who were all teenagers. And she married him and took care of those kids. So my mom and my aunts and uncles always talk about how she kind of stepped in to help, because they were all teenagers and they just lost their mother. And then my grandfather, I'm sure, was trying to figure out how to deal with all of these children. So I learned all of that about her like much later, and mostly not from her, right? It was just from stories from everybody else. So if you have interesting stories about your lives, like share them with your kids and your grandkids, because I got a lot of it secondhand, but it was just super fascinating to learn all of that about her life before she came to us. And then when she passed away, she had all this jewelry. She loved costume jewelry, like anything you could go into the department store and buy that was like shiny or sparkly, and she had so much of it. And when she passed away, I took it all and I pinned it to a big bulletin board, and we told anybody who came to the service to like just take something. And everybody came and like took pieces of her jewelry, and so I just love the fact that it's all like just out there, like floating around in the world, and everybody just has pieces of her jewelry. And I kept a couple pieces, so I just brought one of those today. All right, that was a long story, sorry.
I'm Sally Zagorski Salenza, Polish background, and I'm very proud that I grew up in the inner city of Chicago. I hear a lot of people's stories, and they're all telling how they grew up on the farm and their grandparents were farmers. And my grandparents on both sides owned taverns. They lived in the inner city. They took public transportation everywhere. My brother owns our family home, 4th generation in the family, in the inner city of Chicago. And they were just very proud city dwellers, and they knew how to navigate the city really well. And my kids live in the city now. One lives in Chicago, one lives in Milwaukee, and I'm just a very proud Polish city dweller. And that's the tip.
Hi, I'm Dennis, and this is a hand drill from the late 1800s to the early 1900s, and it's called the beater drill, because it's, the hand beaters came after it. But this I got out of my father's workshop when he retired. My father's still alive. And I believe it was my grandfather's, because I remember as a kid, when I was little, I hung out with my grandfather a lot. And in his shed, he had things like this. So my guess is it came from him. And my father was a home builder and a remodeler and a construction person, so very hands-on, which some of you here know that's me. I'm very hands-on. I've always built things and worked in my yard and love digging in the dirt. So I noticed how dirty this is this morning when I took it out of the box. And I'm kind of embarrassed by that, and I think I'm going to clean it up when I take it home.
Hi, I'm Donna, and I think the branch doesn't fall far from the tree, but my mother was a seamstress. I mean, she made clothing for me. I've been making clothing. My grandma made clothing and aprons and all kinds of stuff, and her grandmother sewed on that machine. It's patented in, the machine is actually on the plate, dated April 28th, 1836. And it's called a Ketchum sewing machine. It makes a chain stitch. And I just brought the stuff. You see my grandma, she didn't sew on it, but this woman is Eliza Cole. She and her husband lived in Watertown, and the home is still existing there. It was built the same time that the Octagon House was built in 1855. And Martha and I toured that house a year ago summer. It's a private residence now, but I'm sure that machine was in that house. It's kind of And I did dust it off. So you can pick these things up.
I'm Jim, and I brought something that was my father's. He was born in 1908 and a member of the Greatest Generation. He served in World War II, and he took this with him. And when he returned, he left his gun and his uniform behind, but he did bring his a cribbage set. So hopefully that he enjoyed a lot of peace while he was at war. As I said, he was 32 years old and married with 1.5 children when he left, so he was a reluctant soldier. But it's just a reminder to me, I'm really glad he came back, because I was born 3 years after he came back. But just a reminder that the whole world was at war at one time, and I'm just so grateful now that we are at a period where we're not at war with any country at the moment. So it's bad that you hear the news, but I'm so grateful there's so much peace in the world at the same time.
Hi, I'm Len. My dad was an engineer, and I'm guessing about half of you know what this is. He always gave me a love for science. I had kind of a colorful relationship with my dad, and I think that my dog actually told me more about being a person than he did, and those are some dog tags from him.
My name is Molly, and my grandpa passed away this summer. Many of you guys know that, but we just wanted to honor him by putting this picture up for him.
And I'm Abby, and maybe next year I'll be able to say something, but not today. So you can put it there.
I'm going to see if I can be somewhat succinct. Back in Norway in 1926, there was what was called Galapagos fever. That there was this book out telling all about the wonderful, tropical, beautiful islands in the Galapagos Islands. And my grandfather apparently bought that line quite well. So he moved himself and his wife and 3 children, of which mom was one, to the Galapagos Islands. And they sailed September 2nd, 1926, and there were like 38 travelers. That's not the right word. Well, yeah. But they were leaving Norway and going to, Yeah, immigrants for sure. But that was a process too, because even leaving the country of Norway at that time became a little bit more challenging because of Galapagos fever. They were like the 3rd Norwegian group to sail to the islands. If there's a picture of the ship in here, and it isn't very attractive at all. So to bring your family in such settings is kind of weird, in my opinion. Especially, my mother was 2 years old. My uncle was younger than that. So to take little children to this unknown tropical island because it sounded so wonderful, it wasn't. They landed. They went to the San Cristobal Island, it's like the 5th largest in the Galapagos Islands, and they stayed there for 2 years. There's a picture in here of the village, quote unquote, which doesn't look extremely nice at all. My grandmother's full of stories, but she wasn't real reliable with the stories, so we really don't have the facts. The only thing I know for sure is they stayed 2 years. My grandpa made his own machete Whaley was there, which my son has now in Madison. And Mom's only memory of it was that she got to ride one of the major big tortoises. This isn't my mother, but it's what my mom remembers, is a little kid riding a tortoise. The Galapagos mean tortoise, just kind of FYI. It was full of lots of large tortoises. And this is the ship's log that has my grandparents named here on the actual log sheet for the travel to the Galapagos Islands. So why is that important to me? I don't know. Other than they left after 2 years because it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. I'm sure that was a big part of it. And they ended up in the United States and somehow ended up in Chicago, and the banks crashed. So they were stuck in America, and if it weren't for the traveling to the Galapagos and going up to the bank crash, and the timing of everything, I wouldn't be here. So.
Hi, I'm Michael again. This is a antique leader box for putting your leads in if you're a fisherman. My grandmother, my mother's mother, lived in South Dakota in the Black Hills in a canyon with a trout stream running through it. And although I wasn't out there very often, I was there enough. She loved to fish. She would fly fish. She'd put on the waders and get down in the thing, and we eventually could swim in that stream because we built a little dam. But I love to fish, and I think probably one of the reasons that I'm so tuned into nature and fishing is because of her, being exposed to her at a very, very young age. So this is for my grandma. She and my grandfather both came from Ireland. So I'm Irish.
I'm Paul W. Bergman, and I'm remembering my father, who is Paul K. Bergman. In 1951, I was a little less than 2 years old, and my father was called up to serve in Korea, and he was wounded very badly there, and he nearly died, and so thankfully he did not. Otherwise, I would have grown up without a father, so that has some very deep meaning to me. So what I brought today was the Purple Heart that he received in Korea.
I'm Susan, and I brought a brooch that belonged to my grandmother, Margaret Tweddle, which is a great name. She was born in 1886, so she was part of that Victorian era where you lived with your family. And she lived with her parents for the whole of her life. And I should just say that her older sister, her parents refused to let her marry the seaman, or he was a captain actually, who had proposed to her, because her mother wanted someone in the house to look after her in her old age. So my grandmother didn't marry for a long time, but when she met my grandfather, they agreed to let her marry him, but it seems like he had to move in the house. So he moved in with the family, and so she lived there the whole of her life with the children. She had 3 children, so my father was part of that household. One of the lovely stories I love about her is that if the doorbell, someone came to the door and they knocked on the door, she would put her hat on. There was a hat stand right next to the door in the hallway. She'd open the door, and if it was somebody she wanted to talk to, she'd say, "Oh, I've just come in, I'm just taking my hat off." And if it was somebody she didn't want to talk to, she said, "Oh, I'm just on my way out."
Hi, my name is Siri. I was 7 or 8 when my great grandma Gloria died. I don't remember much about her, but she had a big sweet tooth. She loved candy.
Adjust this without making a ton of noise. Hi, I'm Geoff. Thank you for this. Just getting so many connections of what shaped me. Dennis, what I have here is a little piece of technically Britannia metal. It is the modern alloy of pewter because old pewter had lead. This comes from my dad. My dad was many things, mostly crafty with his hands, and collected a lot of old tools, Dennis. And later in his years, after he retired, he would just make things out of pewter and all that. And this is one of these, and Sarah picked this one out because it's the Darwin fish. Just thought that'd be fun for the UU folks from there. But yeah, so that's kind of thing that definitely formed and shaped me, is just seeing him always making things by himself, wood, metal, whatever. And then also on the other side for me, which in my work I represent a manufacturing company, so we do old-fashioned cutting of metal. So another thing that I really just want to shout out to is, the history and generations of knowledge of just how things are made, like, coming also there from that sewing machine. So kind of a couple things reaching out. Thanks.
I'm Maria. This is not something from someone, but it's representative of my parents. My mom's birthday is on Halloween. She would be 90 this year, and they both passed within the last couple of years. My dad grew up during the Depression and had nothing, but had parents that made a lot of things. Irish heritage was lots of stories, bootlegging, all sorts of things going on there. So he was always very creative and couldn't pass up anything that was a deal. So they had lots of stuff, and not stuff that meant anything to me much. But he was very creative with use, and he would buy things really cheap when he would get them. And so he always had something cool if you wanted something cool. And we repurposed this pumpkin to put over our lights. And my dad had bought a whole shopping cart of these pumpkins one year for like $1, like 2 weeks after Halloween, and had them strung up in his yard every year. He was very creative. He loved to sing, and he was a teacher and told lots of stories and bought stuffed animals and gutted them and made them into puppets and tried to entertain children with them. My mom came from Milwaukee, Polish family. Her dad was a tool and die maker for Schlitz, and her mom hand-dipped chocolate for Fanny Farmer. And she loved cooking and baking, and trick-or-treat was totally their thing because they loved costumes, they loved dressing up. My mom loved treating. She was a nurturer. She cooked, she baked. She was always treating people to something. And my dad was always entertaining them. So they were totally trick-or-treaters their entire life.
Hi, I'm Rick. I have a little bit of artwork from my grandfather, Donald Pegler. Don worked for an advertising company in Chicago from the 60s to the 90s. And you might remember Raid, the bug spray. So Raid is owned by S.C. Johnson, and he was the cartoonist, the artist that made all the little advertisements. He's just such a fun, wonderful person. So this is some merchandise that Raid sold in the 60s. And I looked, yeah, exactly. And I looked on eBay, and there's like dozens of these bags that people are selling. It's kind of fun, it's collectible. Yeah, he was born in 1929, and he grew up in Chicago during the Great Depression. He served in World War II in Japan. He lied about his age towards the end of the war to serve our country. And then afterwards, he went into advertising and drawing advertisements. And he raised 7 kids on his salary as an artist. So he's a really wonderful guy, and I miss him a lot. He passed away in 2011, and it took me on a lot of fun trips around Chicago, and he really loved where he grew up. So, yeah.
I remember that my mom told me this one time about her dad. So she was at dinner and she didn't use this like fork, and she said, "Hey Dad, I haven't used this fork." And her dad said, "Well, give it to me." And then my mom gave the fork to her dad. And then my mom's dad just licked it and said, "Now it's dirty."
So I'm Chet, and Chet is where my name came from. It goes way back. All four of my grandparents came from Italy, and my grandfather, my mother's side, actually came over as a stowaway on a potato boat. If you can imagine, like 2 weeks at sea in the hull of a ship with a bunch of other people sleeping on potato sacks, and then the first mate who was running the gig would lower down the bucket every day of food, and then he'd pull the bucket of waste out to throw over the side, and they all lived down there, and it was for the whole time. But anyway, it's an interesting story. But when I had an Uncle Chet, and Uncle Chet was named Chet because somehow we were digging up some legacy, some old names, and there's a couple of grandparents. His grandfather there was a Cesare, Italian name for Chet, and who lived in Italy. And then we dug a little further, and there's another Cesare. So this name has been carried down. So obviously my grandfather, his firstborn, he named Chet. So, and he got a brain tumor right before I was born and died. And so at the funeral, the story goes, my grandfather was very sad, and he said, "The next person who names their son Chet, I'll give them $500. And my dad's like, you know what $500 was like back then? So my mom's out to here with me, and but her goal was her whole family moved to California, so she wanted me to be named Charles after her father. And here's this great event now, and she's kind of like, really? And she'd kind of made that decision. Well, anyway, we got to name him Chet. Well, his name is middle name Charles. So I'm Chester Charles. So then not even 6 months, 8 months later, my grandfather passed. It was a sad year, my father says. Oh, by the way, my dad never took the money too. He says, "No, I didn't." Anyway. So anyway, my grandfather passed, Louis, and my mom wants to name a son Charles after her dad. And so my mom's out to here, Grandpa dies, and she's like, and my dad's like, "Oh, we have to name him Louis after my father." And so she's like, "No." So she put her foot down that time, and so my brother's name is Charles Lewis. So then, and then a few years later, my brother was born. When my brother was born, my dad was like, Louis. And so, she says, I really wanted to name him after my Uncle Dan, who passed. And so my dad kind of somehow he figured out that, and so his name is Louis Daniel. So it goes, yeah, so that's the legacy. So then my name is the thing I'm throwing on the table. And my son's name is Charles Chester. So. And that's because you really like that name. I was like, score.
Hi, my name is Diane, and I wanted to share this picture. It's a really cool old picture of my grandparents' wedding, those wonderful sepia pictures. They were really kind of the rock of my childhood. It wasn't such a smooth childhood with my parents, but I always could count on my grandparents to be there and to be solid. And just these memories of going to visit my grandfather. He'd always be at the kitchen table listening to a baseball game or football, whatever it was, with a Manhattan here and a jar of peanuts. And he'd go get your soda and come and sit with me. And my grandmother, well, OCD kind of runs in the family. So they grew up or they married in the 20s sometimes. So, you know, they lived through the whole Depression. She had, in those days, it was a modest fridge, but there was not an inch of room. She packed that thing with so much food. There was these incredible pictures. It was like one of those Jenga puzzles or something. How did she get all that food into this small space? Because always there was going to be a shortage or an army would be coming over or something. And the other thing I remember about them is that they were people of great faith. And my grandmother loved Mother Mary, and so my grandfather built her a shrine in her backyard, and all the grandmas would come over. I would remember, I think it was on a Thursday night, and they'd pray the rosary together. So.
I don't have a whole lot of material things left from my ancestors. My sister got most of them. And if you don't know, my sister is Mormon. Part of the Mormon religion is to trace your ancestors and baptize by proxy. They go back and baptize distant relatives. Some poor kid is stuck there getting dunked numerous times. Anyway, several years ago, she sent me a book. This book was written by a distant cousin. It's the story of two brothers, relatives of mine, during the Civil War on the Confederacy side. And one of them was enlisted, and the other one was drafted. But it's quite an interesting book of their exploits. And they were in the same unit. So this is kind of, like Geoff said, this is interesting from a historical point of view.
Hi, I'm Jen, and I don't actually know a whole lot about my family beyond my grandparents. But what I did inherit was not just the love of nature, but the spirituality of nature, finding the sacred in nature. And so my immediate family with my dad, we used to go all over the place, but inevitably we'd end up at the same campground for 45 years. So we have more pictures of sunsets at that campground than you can possibly imagine, and that's what I brought today.
My name is Isabel, and I remember, like, my mom and dad were just telling me about how different it was because, like, my dad is French and Italian and my mom is Polish and German. And I remember someone telling me that those, like, different, like, tribes, I don't know what to call them, were, like, fighting in World War. So it's so just bizarre for me to think about how my ancestors were fighting each other. So.
So I have a little piece of my nephew Josh, who passed away. And I think what I remember most and will take with me about Josh is that he wasn't afraid to just be silly. He was very quirky and wasn't afraid to be just crazy. Like, he'd get underwear for Christmas and put it on over his clothes and, you know, just do silly things like that. So that's for Josh. And then this is my grandma, my maternal grandma, Edith Lawrence. She always had my sister and I out to her cottage, her house, and would do creative things with us, like sew Barbie clothes and just a whole bunch, like just tons of creative stuff. And I think that's where I got my creativity from, is my grandma. So Grandma Ede. And she came to me actually when I was in college. I was laying in bed and I was super worried about something, and I was in that sleeping, dreaming kind of mode, and she came to the side of my bed and she took my hand and she said, "Everything is going to be okay." And that's what I carry most with me about my grandma, that everything's going to be okay. And I will turn the cameras off if anybody wants to come up and share off camera. Spirit of life, grandmothers, grandfathers, ancestors known and unknown. Thank you for the gifts that live on through us. We are so grateful for the way our unique expression is supported and held by you. We listen deeply to the dreams that you have for us, so that we may nourish and strengthen ourselves and our communities for all those who will come after us. Help us to be co-creators of a web beyond what we currently imagine is possible. Help us to understand this web as a vibrant, alive, ever-evolving place, and support us in being active participants, giving and receiving gifts that allow us all to thrive. Blessed be, and amen. Thanks everyone for sharing. And remember to not go downstairs for coffee hour. You're welcome.